heart leads us to give, but the head should govern how it's done.
David Goldberg. After selling his first business 15 years ago, he became obsessed with the idea of making it absurdly easy for entrepreneurs to have an outsized social impact. This led to the creation of Founders Pledge, a community of experienced entrepreneurs who have now collectively pledged over $10 billion to charity. In this episode, he guides us on how to think about our own post-exit impact in a rational and authentic way.
All human life has equal value. We are all the same. If that's the case, how can we help as many people as possible by as much as possible? The thing that keeps me going is like, what we're building is important, and it's never been done before in this way. We're like a multifamily office set up exclusively for entrepreneurs that focuses exclusively on philanthropy and charges nothing for its service.
David, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So for me, you're an extremely rare example of someone who achieved significant financial success early in life. But instead of spoiling yourself rotten or just retiring and enjoying your wealth or managing your wealth full time, you're laser focused on solving the world's nastiest problems. And you created a sustainable vehicle for doing that. And you persuaded thousands of successful entrepreneurs to join you in this quest. So on this podcast, I really want to explore how you decided to do that, how you made this decision. I'll ask you directly, what is your purpose? How much clarity on that you have?
I think like a fair bit. Like my purpose is to like help as many people as much as possible in the small amount of time that I have. I saw a chart once. It actually gave me like more fire and drive than anything I'd ever experienced before. I read this website called Wait But Why, and it's written by a guy named Tim Urban, and he's one of the great communicators of our time. And I remember, reading through the website many years ago now, and I found he did an article on your life in weeks, which is like a pretty crazy idea. So and he has an A4 sheet of paper, and it starts in your life in years, and then your life in month, and your life in weeks, and it shows the boxes at each stage. And so you can actually like print off the sheet of paper and cross off the weeks that you've lived. It's a 90-year life on an A4 sheet of paper. Cross off the weeks that you've lived. You're pretty far down the paper pretty soon after graduating from university and having your first couple of jobs. And then you look at where the great people in history, how long they've lived and where they got to by the time they were your age. And you're like, oh man, I don't have much time left. And you could tick off this box, like this chart week by week, and you see the time like passing by ever faster.
Yeah.
And it really was this just forcing function for we have to do more right now.
Yeah. I love this sense of urgency, which keeps popping up during this interview all the time, because it is one of the common traits for the most successful entrepreneurs. So I have all the confidence with your continuing success.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Now, who is David Goldberg?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm not sure.
How do you think your identity changed over time?
No, I'm not sure that it has so much. I feel like I feel often like very similar then and now. Just I guess a bit more experience.
Okay. So you don't necessarily, torture yourself over the question, who am I and what's my identity at the moment?
No, my identity is like, me. I'm like trying to be better all the time, not always succeeding. I work hard. I sometimes push people also to work hard, maybe sometimes too hard. So like my identity is like, I'm very much driven by mission.
Yeah.
I have been for a long time.
And working hard, which seems to be the story of your whole life coming from your
I also don't know how to like be chill about stuff necessarily. So
you're
like,
intense.
I'm intense a lot. My partner often teases me that like if we have a weekend where we're not doing anything, I will like invent things to do. We were joking yesterday actually, like sitting in the living room, and I was like, I really want to build a new like corner TV unit. It's like, please don't start another project on a Sunday morning to finish it that evening. Like, no, I'm not going to. But I don't know how to have downtime necessarily.
So talking about your husband, what do you think are the secrets of your successful relationships through quite the roller coaster that your life has been so far?
Honesty, flexibility, knowing that another person can't fix me and I can't fix him, and giving each other space when we need it and closeness when we want more of that. I travel a lot for work, so we chat a lot, but basically, like, we're each people on a journey, evolving, hopefully mostly in the same direction, sometimes not always. Just being honest about that and being comfortable with, sometimes we'll be great and other times we won't be, but, we've been on the path together for so long that and been through ups and downs that together we can do anything.
What keeps you up at night?
A lot. I have struggled with sleep my whole life. I ask people this when I interview people actually for jobs. I ask 2 questions, like what keeps you up at night and what wakes you up in the morning. The scale of problems that exist in the world really keeps me up at night. Things have been getting better for a really long time. And in a lot of ways, they're getting worse in recent years. We've never seen more sort of interstate conflict than in the last couple of years. We've seen real declines in the gains that we made in malaria. So we're seeing insecticide resistance in mosquitoes. And so malaria for the first time in decades is on the rise in parts of the world where it's horrible already. I'm worried about how climate change is going to continue to affect how we live our lives in the global north and in high-income countries, not to mention just the havoc it's already caused in low-income countries and what this is going to mean for disease vectors. Like, there's a lot of problems, and I feel like often not enough people trying to solve them or focused on solving them. So that keeps you up, along with like all the standard stuff, like, running a business and making sure it works well and making sure people are well motivated and happy and we're doing a good job. Like I get into bed and then I close my eyes and like my head goes, all the stuff that you've not done well, like how could you do it better, thinking about the next day, the next week.
How do you deal with that? Do you meditate?
I've tried. I sometimes do that successfully, but I went to a cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Although I don't think I have terrible insomnia, and I've developed a good routine now that I actually get to bed pretty well, but after like years of work to do it. Yeah.
So what wakes you up in the morning?
I've now got to the age where, regardless of an alarm, I wake up at the exact same time every single day.
Same here.
Regardless of if I've gone out the night before or stayed up late, like clockwork. But like the point of the question is like, what's my motivation? Like, how do I leave and go to work and do that well? Like, what's the opportunity to affect the world positively? And I really do believe that like, a Founder's Pledge lives up to its potential and does well stuff that must do well, then we can change the shape of the world.
You certainly can. How do you want to be remembered?
As someone who's given back, as someone who's like left a mark on the world. Like I think like everyone wants to like leave a mark on history. That like sort of my time, my contribution was worth something.
I want to know what your parents expected from you.
Yeah. I think they just expected me to be great most of the time. Not ever in like a very high pressure way, but my parents were working class. They really worked very hard to provide for my brother and I, even though like we grew up with less than most people around us. And I saw how hard my parents worked and knew that, from a very young age that I couldn't really squander the opportunity that they gave me. And so, they really just sort of expected me to be great and excellent and excel in everything I did. And I tried to.
But it sounds like they created this environment where you felt that you were lucky to be where you are. It sounds like there is gratitude there. You said you couldn't squander the opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, my dad worked 2 jobs. My mom had a small business and did work, on the side. So they worked long hours, and it was very obvious to me that they did. Whereas, the kids in my neighborhood, parents, one parent had a job, the other was a stay-at-home mother, which, meant that it just seemed different in other homes, really.
So you are unusually well educated for an entrepreneur. in our community of post-exit founders, we often debate the value of formal education.
Yeah.
I wonder, if you look back at your life, what do you think your education gave you?
Well, it's interesting because when I was a kid, I really didn't like learning. I found high school, to just be like a supreme waste of time. I think I was mostly pretty bored. And in fact, I dropped out of high school when I was 17.
Okay.
And just decided that, finishing, high school diploma didn't make any sense. I wanted to go make money. I realized at a sort of, in my teenage years that I thought money was the answer to all problems. And I decided I was going to just go make as much of it as possible. And staying at high school didn't seem like the right way to do that. So I dropped out when I was 17 and got a job when I was 18. By sort of luck and happenstance, I was able to convince a private bank to hire me. I walked into this private bank. I knew someone who knew someone there. I dropped a name. I was able to speak to the president of this bank, and I convinced him to hire me as his assistant. And it was January 7th, 2002. And I just turned 18. And so like I basically proved that you didn't need education to get a good job. It turns out I wasn't very good at this job. Why would I have been? I'd never worked before.
Exactly.
I certainly didn't like taking orders from someone as an assistant, it turned out. But rather than getting fired, which I had every right to be after about a month, I got put on a rotational program. And ended up joining a department a couple of months later that was doing something that I was quite good at, basically. And so I was successful sort of pretty early on. And I worked in this bank selling mortgage-backed securities on secondary markets for about 3 years, and found myself, a couple of years later, 21, I was hiring MBAs to work underneath me. And so it's just sort of, at that point, I didn't feel that education really mattered.
So what changed? Why did you end up doing quite a lot of education?
It's a slightly long story. Well, it's a long story, basically. But the short version is I did this career in finance for a couple of years. At the end of 22, I really didn't like who I had become. I was working to live as opposed to the other way around. No, that's not right. I was living to work.
You was living to work, exactly.
Like, all I did was work, 7 a.m. in the office, home at midnight, 6 days a week, rinse, repeat, for years.
Which makes a lot of sense, because that's also what your parents instilled in you as a core value.
I worked really hard.
Makes a lot of sense.
And I made a lot of money. And I found myself, I felt like I was approaching this decision. Like I either double down on this space and I just do this for the rest of my life and commit to being unhappy, which is sort of what it felt like, or I get out right now. And I thankfully got out. And I quit this job in 2005. And I'm so glad I did. I then, 2006 came around. I bought a one-way ticket to Europe. I traveled for a couple of months and then ended up in Berlin, which was the most fun city I'd ever been to. I'd never been out of the U.S. before I bought this ticket to Europe.
That was incredibly brave of you. But also it brings us to one of many things I find extremely impressive about you, is how you built a business in a country where you didn't speak the language. How did that happen? Tell me that story.
So I moved to Berlin. Well, I went back to Berlin with the intention to live there. And I figured it'd be pretty easy to get an apartment, to set up a life, figure out, what to do. I didn't really have a plan. And I soon learned that if you didn't speak German, it was really hard to get an apartment, to rent a flat. And I went through this pretty harrowing process where I found an estate agent who spoke very broken English, who gave me a list of properties to see by myself that I had to arrange by myself. And then when I eventually found one I liked and negotiated with the landlord for the rent, I got an invoice from this estate agent charging me 2 months of rent. And I was just flabbergasted because he basically did nothing and that he wanted a lot of money. And it turned out I started talking to people. I made some friends over the couple of weeks that I'd been there. I was staying in a hostel. And it turned out this is sort of how it worked. And I thought, that's crazy. and broken, and I could do it better for less.
You recognized the opportunity. You were ready for it.
There was a real need.
Yeah.
I felt, and this was Berlin was becoming cool at this point. It wasn't, I don't think it was at sort of peak coolness at that point. And so I started a business helping people like me figure out how to live in a country where they didn't speak the language. And it started like as a relocation company.
Yeah.
And it grew very quickly. It wasn't a technology company. There was no investors. It was bootstrapped. And it wasn't sexy. It just made money pretty quickly. And a couple of years later, I sold it.
A couple of years is a very short period of time from starting a company to actually exiting.
That's right.
It's quite incredible, and especially in a country where you don't speak the language.
Yeah, I didn't need to speak the language. I mean, I sort of like fully leaned into this thing that like, you can come to me if you want to live in Berlin and not ever have to speak a word of German to get an apartment and have your life set up. This is as YouTube was becoming a thing. And so we started doing YouTube walkthroughs and putting them on the internet so that people could rent an apartment without having ever seen it physically from a different part of the world. And we just streamlined the whole process end to end. Hired students to work with our clients in English. They practiced their English, which was nice for them.
Yeah.
And then they interacted, on the other hand, in German with the owners and the property managers. And it just became this really easy thing. I charged half as much and did twice the work. And it became a thing pretty quickly. I think it was mostly right place, right time.
Yeah.
And, 2 years in, I got an acquisition offer, like inbound acquisition offer that I took.
Brilliant. So when I first met you, I thought one of the things that made you really stand out from my perspective was that you are very well aware of your natural, amazing communication skills. And you mentioned yourself very early in life when you persuaded the head of a private bank to hire you. Help me understand, at what point did you realize that talent, and how did you work on those skills? Because it seems to be such a core talent for you, core skill as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't remember where I was like, yeah, this is the thing that I'm really good at. Okay, I'm really good at talking to people. Yeah. But I certainly remember persuading my parents as a child to allow me to stay up late to watch Star Trek with my dad, or like not go to bed. So I always negotiated for everything. And this sometimes got me in trouble, but it often worked. And I never really took no for an answer. Yeah. And again, this often got me in trouble, but it also mostly worked most of the time. So I sort of realized that like talking was a way to get what you wanted. If you're good at it, you could get lots of things.
Yeah. So do you think your parents encouraged it? Or you think they tried to suppress it, but they couldn't?
I don't know, actually, but I like to think that they encouraged it as opposed to try to suppress it.
Okay.
I know. So my dad and I used to like play Scrabble and do like riddles and word games as a kid. So I assume that, he had some thought into like, oh, my son is a good communicator. How do I make him better at it? How do I increase his vocabulary? I guess.
Can we go to that moment when you first realized you were exiting your business? How did you feel?
Overwhelmed. I wasn't planning to. That's the thing. I was living in Berlin. I was pretty, content. There was this thing that was sort of running itself. I didn't really do much.
Okay.
I didn't love it.
After just 2 years, you also
I figured
to automate it.
I liked the 0 to 1 a lot.
Yeah.
And it just seemed to work. I hired young people, paid them well, and it just sort of ran on its own, mostly. And I got this inbound offer from a larger property company saying, we've been following your progress. You're out competing us with this market. We'd like to acquire you. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I talked to my partner, and it just made sense. My heart wasn't in it. It was a nice offer.
Yeah.
I maybe probably could have got more or like much more if I just kept on doing it, but it didn't really feel like it was a thing that I wanted to do.
So would you say that your motivation for your first business was purely financial? Purely financial.
Yeah.
It happens so much, doesn't it? So many of us just have this idea of getting financial freedom. Sometimes it's we want to prove ourselves, plus it's financial freedom, but it's more financial freedom.
For sure.
How has it changed for you in terms of your motivation and your definition of success as well?
Yeah.
after you sold your business?
Pretty radically. So like I had the deal happened quick, and I realized sort of as it was concluding that I'd gotten really lucky.
Yeah.
I think that like this is a thing that we under index on as a community of entrepreneurs.
True.
Being in the right place at the right time, and just things sort of working out. And it wasn't just that I got lucky at this point. It was that on reflection, I'd gotten lucky a lot. And, it wasn't a crazy exit where I never have to do anything. It could have been, I guess. But I felt like I'd won the life lottery sort of 3 times. Mm-hmm. As a kid, I felt poor. We were, in relative terms. Yeah. But actually, I was born a white man in California in the 1980s, which is sort of as good as it gets. And then I got the job in finance. And I was just freshly 18, literally the week I turned 18, and was successful and did that for a bunch of years and left of my own accord. And then I had this business that I started and sold without real intent or direction. Yeah. And it just felt like I had accrued a ton of good karma that I probably needed to redistribute if I was going to stay, on the right side of the books,
Fascinating.
And so I felt sort of compelled to do something more than just sit on my wealth and allow it to amass and aggregate just for me. I just sort of had this moment where I was like, this isn't really mine, is it? I've just sort of been lucky enough to have this good fortune. I should get back. And I guess I was a bit naive in thinking that it would be just a very straightforward and easy thing to do. And then I'd spend a couple of months on it and then move on to the next project, whatever that project was. I didn't know, but I felt like at this point I should rebalance the scales. And what I thought was going to take a couple of months, I'm still working on 15 years later, right? It was a much more challenging thing. And to answer your question, this is what sort of brought me back to education. I had this outcome. Yeah. I wanted to give back. I started looking into charities. It'll be easy. I'll ask for some data. I'll look at the numbers. I'll, figure out which is best by, doing some analysis, and then that'll be that. But charities just couldn't provide data in the way that I wanted. They weren't very numerate or quantitative. It was really about trying to, for charities, tell a compelling story and, grab someone by the heartstrings and get them to buy into the idea of the mission rather than what does the thing actually accomplish. Yeah. And it was really crazy to me and really foreign that charities were selling this emotional product. Yeah. And I really wanted a rational conversation. Right. And it just seemed like they were focusing on the wrong stuff. I mean, I guess from their perspective, their donors wanted to feel good, feel emotionally compelled by this mission. Of course. And they optimized for that. And it's really not what I wanted.
Is it because you already thought as a business person?
Yeah. I was like, I run my business this way. Yeah. I invest my money in this way. Why would I not think about philanthropy in the same capacity, right? Yeah. When we make decisions about what to invest in or what not to invest in or which product line to double down on and which to cut, which strategy works and which doesn't, we don't make decisions based on, how emotionally compelling something is. We make decisions based on the data. Okay. We run the numbers, we do tests, and we iterate based on the result.
So how much time did you spend in soul searching? Because you have such amazing clarity of, I guess, your true purpose right now. But how difficult was it to find it? Because I think that once we've exited, we have this, we suddenly have the time and financial freedom to do this soul searching. But it feels hard and unpleasant for most of us, so we try to avoid it by jumping into a familiar activity. You and I saw it many times, whether it's angel investing or jumping into another business, but people really try to avoid this kind of hard thinking and facing the truth that you seem to have faced very brilliantly. Yeah. But I don't want it to sound as if it just happened like this, if it hasn't. Help me understand, how did you get to that?
It's been a process, right? So I did not really feel like I had the luxury of time, even though I guess I did in retrospect. I felt pretty compelled. There was this really big problem, and I just don't like problems that feel solvable. And this felt solvable in a way. It made sense that organizations working on big social problems would use data.
Yeah.
And they didn't, and it felt weird.
Yeah.
But I also didn't really know how much I didn't know. Well, I knew that I didn't know a lot, but I didn't know how big a lot was. And I didn't know how to start thinking about it. So my soul searching was, I don't really have enough knowledge or like ability to think critically about this space or how to affect it at all. And so my soul searching led me to, I need to get educated finally. Like I dropped out of high school. I had no real formal education, and I could hustle. Like I was street smart.
Yeah.
And I was like numerate, but I didn't know how to think, critically or systematically. And so I decided, like, my soul searching led me to, I'm going to go figure out how to think better and upgrade my operating system.
So how was the idea of Founders Pledge born?
So I had this exit, wanted to give back, tried, did poorly. Like I was really unhappy with the stuff that I gave to it, and I felt like I really thought critically about it. But I decided to run a test. Like, I'll give some money to a couple of different things and see what I get back. And it was pretty unnerving, and I was unhappy about it.
Yeah.
And I concurrently moved back to the U.S. with my then boyfriend, now husband, and we enrolled in community college. So I had to do like a remote correspondence to finish high school, which I did, and then went to community college, studied there for 2 years. We both did, and then transferred to UCLA, where I did a double in political science and public policy. I thought these were two areas that would lend themselves well to understanding levers of systemic change. It did. And from there, I sort of got the learning bug. I went to my undergrad at 25, and all of my peers were teenagers, basically.
Yeah.
And but I liked learning. I was like really taken by it, and then came to the UK to do a PhD. I started one, at least.
How did you persuade your husband to join you in this quest?
Pretty straightforward.
Okay.
So he's from Berlin, wanted to see the world and travel. It was clear that we were, in a long-term relationship. We were going to go do life together. Yeah. So he came with me, which was fun. Yeah. And he's from Berlin. So the deal was always, we'll spend, undergrad in the US, and then we'll come back to Europe for the next chapter.
But you came back to London.
I came to Cambridge, to the UK. I applied to a bunch of schools. I got into the ones that I wanted, and Cambridge was the place for me. They had one of the best international relations programs in the world, and went there. Jacob came with me. It was much, much closer to home. And I studied. He commuted to London and worked.
So I'm also someone who had 2 immigrations in my life. So I can appreciate how difficult it is to understand a new culture. But it's also, it opens your horizons amazingly. It really changes you as a person. I would love you to tell me how it felt for you living it in a different culture for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in Berlin, so it was like really radically different.
And built the business there.
Yeah, but the UK was different. I just come from California. UCLA was where I did my undergrad, and I absolutely loved it there. The teachers really were invested, professors invested in their students' outcomes. They really wanted people to succeed. I had maybe one of my favorite professors ever, who was he never published anything, but he just really cared, and he put time in to every student. And there was just like this sort of stewardship that happened. And then I came to the UK. It was Cambridge, one of the old, hallowed universities, and it was radically different. It was the professors just mostly unhappy old men, and who really didn't take the same level of care with their students. I think it's mostly there was this, if you get here, you're you've proved that you're among the best, and now you have to prove you're among the best of the best, and you got to do it alone. And it felt felt very alone. And very unsupported. I didn't love my time at Cambridge. I did well there, right? I really had something to prove, I felt like going to UCLA and getting good grades there was I had something to prove. But I got into Cambridge. I really got it. Now I have to be the best. Okay. And I was. But I didn't love it.
Looking back, was it worth it?
Yeah. course. I don't like doing things halfway or part way. And I really went for it. I made wonderfully good friends there who thought I worked too hard and tried too hard and had less fun than they did. And that's probably true, but I'm glad that I did. And didn't stay to do the PhD. I started and stopped.
No. I remember you mentioned that you figured it wasn't the best way for you to give back.
It wasn't the best way for me to spend my time.
Exactly.
And, I was older than most of my peers even then. And it's just, I was like, this isn't the right use of 5 years. I could go do something.
Yeah.
And I remember back to this moment where I was like, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to think about how to think better, figure out how to think better. And then I'm going to go do the thing that I wanted, which is how do you solve these big system level problems that we've had forever?
So has that formal education in 2 different major universities helped you solve those problems?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so without that experience, you don't think you would do it at least as efficiently?
No chance. Okay. I mean, I just, I didn't know how to think systematically. I learned how to think about the world and about the power structures within it, how the role that policy plays, how social movements actually form and what they mean. I learned how to actually think quantitatively rather than just be numerate.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't change it for sure.
So would it be correct to say that your definition of success after you sold your business changed into this idea of how do I grow myself? How do I prepare myself to achieve that goal that I have, which was given back? And then it drove you to succeed in those 2 universities in quite a challenging atmosphere where you were, the oldest person in the group.
Yeah.
So your definition of success has changed into preparing yourself to give back. What happens next?
So I leave Cambridge. I see a job spec on the internet that looks like it was written for me. It was that moment of oh wow, these people are looking for me for this job, and it was a job running or helping to run a new initiative that was within the Founders Forum group. So Founders Forum is this wonderful community of tech entrepreneurs started by Brent Hoberman here in London. Yeah. I think it was just after the first .com bust, 2002. It's a way to sort of collectively heal as a community of entrepreneurs. And I joined them just as they were turning 10 to help run this program called the Founders Forum for Good, aiming to help social entrepreneurs build more commercial products and sort of scale impact using technology. So there's this very cool idea that I was well suited to. I had a really clear sense of what impact meant at that point. I was really taken by the idea that technology has the capacity to really transform the level of scale and how the delivery of good happens. And it just made sense. It's a job written for me. And
you said something very important, so I have to interrupt you here. Yes. You said that you had a clear idea of what impact meant for you.
Yeah.
I come across people every day, as I'm sure you do, who want to do impact, but they actually don't know what it means.
Yeah. So for me, it's affecting people positively, whether that be preventing them from dying or improving the quality of life or reducing the burden, disease burden that they have. Impact is the way I think about it, at scale is affecting as many people as possible, as much as possible towards a better or more positive life.
Brilliant. So you're comfortable with having such a broad definition. You don't feel the need that you don't have the need to focus on a particular problem. But the reason I'm asking is because I feel that a lot of people are wasting literally years thinking that they need to find that one problem that they want to dedicate their lives to. But you felt very comfortable having this broad definition.
Absolutely. I mean, helping people is not just helping a group of people. It's helping all people. And, my view has been and continues to be that all human life has equal value, regardless of where it is, where people are born, how they're born, to whom they're born, right? We are all the same. And so if that's the case, how can we help as many people as possible by as much as possible? And it doesn't mean just focusing on one thing. It means sort of taking a broad approach and like moving the needle as much as possible. At least it did for me.
So it sounds like at the time when you started your first business, you were quite selfish. You wanted to solve a problem for yourself.
I wanted to make money.
You wanted to make money.
I solved a problem that I faced that I assumed other people would have.
Yeah.
And I figured I could make good money doing it.
But eventually that was money for you.
Yeah.
So it was, if you're honest with yourself, quite a selfish quest.
For sure.
And then it looks like in a few years, you have grown so much spiritually that you had this clarity that now I want to help other people.
Yeah. So I guess the real turning point was actually understanding what poverty is. So I thought I was poor as a kid, and I was in relative terms, but like I wasn't really. So when I was in Berlin, I traveled a bit. I went to Asia for a month, 2007, and I saw what poverty is.
And you hated it.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And it really made me reevaluate, like, I wasn't really very poor at all, was I? And, when you look at income data over time, I realized that, like, I was actually amongst the wealthiest people ever to have existed. Even though, in relative terms, compared to my peers in Los Angeles, I was not, I was at the very bottom of the income spectrum.
Yeah.
But if you like zoom out to the world, it's like way at the top. And if you zoom out even further and look over time, I was very lucky to, be born when I was where I was.
That trip happened after you sold your business?
No, before.
Before.
Yeah.
Okay.
I took a month off. Business was running well. Sold the business at the end of 2008. Went on this trip in 2007 and I saw it. I was like, wow.
So by the time you became wealthy yourself, you already had this idea.
Yes. I was like,
that explains why it took you so relatively short period of time to make such a huge jump into this desire to serve other people, whoever they are, wherever they are, and not just a small group of people you could relate to.
Yeah, because I didn't relate to the culture in Southeast Asia. I mean, I couldn't, but I saw that these were people, and they were living hard lives, their whole lives. And kids were dying, and there was poverty, and mosquitoes and mosquito-borne disease, and it was harrowing. I mean, parts of this trip were really fun because I had to sort of offset I really felt the.
You felt compassion.
Yeah,
into you.
like a lot of it.
Yeah,
it was hard to witness because I was this still I hadn't had this exit yet, but still in relative terms, this wealthy white person going and touring, Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam and Thailand. It was like, wow, these people really have it much worse than I ever did.
Yeah.
And, but does it have to be this way?
Yeah. So in a way, if we talk to someone who just exited their business and they theoretically want to have a lot of impact, this is quite a common situation, but they don't really feel it deep in their heart. They're not really motivated. Would you say, go to these poor countries, experience them, and see if that triggers your compassion? Would that be a practical advice to my community?
It's a good and challenging question, and I don't know. It was helpful for me, but I'm not sure that I'd recommend it necessarily. I mean, because it triggers a really emotional response, and that emotional response tends to lead people to make decisions that aren't calculated or considered. So these days, I do something different. My business now helps entrepreneurs figure out how to use their resources to affect the world positively. And we try to discourage poverty tourism, which is, I think, often people have a desire to go see what the rest of the world is like, but with the lens of I have money and I want to use that money to affect the world. I guess maybe, I was just going to travel and see more because I hadn't really done that.
Yeah.
And as part of that experience, I saw this poverty and that really affected me. But, most of the people who have exits now have traveled, seen the world, have context in a way that I didn't because I was very sheltered.
Yeah. My problem with poverty tourism is that some people just feel good about themselves when they
go on to see it.
Yeah. And that is a problem. But I like to think that people who already have so much experience as exited founders and usually already have quite developed compassion, because I think to succeed in a business, we actually have to have compassion for our customers, for our employees. If you don't, you may have a business, but it probably will never be really successful. So I find that lots of exited founders already have lots of kindness and compassion and the desire to give.
Yeah.
So for them, traveling may make a lot of sense because they may have experience like you that seeds of compassion will grow when they expand their horizon.
Yeah, I guess to the extent that it actually traveling allows someone to have more compassion and like decide that they want to give, I guess more power to them. But the approach that I take now with Founders Pledge is different than that. We try to approach the question of like how.
I want us to get there because you said it took a bit of time. So you traveled, you exited the business, you went to university, now you have all the skills, now you get involved with Founders Forum. Yeah. What's next?
So I helped to run this foundation for about a year. It was a really lovely idea that didn't really work. And the idea was like, let's help these socially minded people scale better commercially using technology. They were social entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We would call it social tech entrepreneurs.
Why didn't it work? Sounds like a brilliant idea to me.
Yeah, that it does, right?
Yeah.
It should work. I guess it's because they weren't great entrepreneurs overall.
Okay, so it's an execution problem.
I think so, yeah. I mean, they were very well-intentioned, good people that had all of the desire and just lacked the grit, capacity, determination, execution to do it well. I mean, there's a couple of people who were better than others, but overall, we gave almost £1 million of cash to 20 companies, £50,000 grants, equity-free grants. These are businesses to like accelerate their growth, and with mentorship from within the Founders Forum community, and it just didn't work. A year in, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right?
So basically, you're talking about the companies you invested in. These are the people who didn't have enough execution experience.
Yeah.
I understand. So Founders Forum did have that ability to execute, but
the issue was not Founders Forum. The issue was these 20 companies.
I just want to
founders
clarify.
we were trying to support just weren't great.
Yeah.
And we looked long and hard. Like we looked across Europe and had hundreds of applications and picked the 20 best.
When you picked them, you only picked those that actually had a socially impactful purpose.
That's right.
Yeah. Is it possible that these were just types of problems that could not be solved by businesses?
No.
No. Okay. So it's really just the quality of execution.
Yeah. And the issue was like good people, not great entrepreneurs, really cared about affecting the world positively, but just couldn't.
They didn't have
commercial model.
The skills.
Yeah. And so we spent a year doing this, and I, didn't want to spend another year, waste another year having it not work. And I sort of took a step back and I thought, how do I approach this problem differently? And, I had this moment where I was like, what if I just help, great commercial entrepreneurs be more social instead of helping these social entrepreneurs be more commercial? And it really just it clicked. And I was like, I'm going to build the thing that I wanted when I sold my business, which was how do I make decisions about using my resources to affect the world positively? They're scarce resources. Yeah. So how do I use them as effectively as possible to do as much as possible? And work with a community of people that are already sort of on their way to success and are going to have much, much more of it than, even your sort of, the top quartile average.
Of course.
And at the same time, there was this tech was becoming mega, and I was seeing people becoming billionaires, right, left, and center. I mean, these were not overnight successes, but they were like an overnight success after 10 years, right? That's how the saying goes. But there was this subset of people in the world that had more earning potential than anyone else, and it was venture-backed technology companies and the founders behind them. And so I thought, let's just help people like this give better. But it became clear that I was not a person to be listened to. I sort of had ideas about how to do this well, and then developed a bit of a framework for it. But, I was not venture-backed. My exit was not like a venture-backed tech exit. And so I didn't have any credibility or network to execute with. And so I thought maybe there's this idea, let's get people to commit to give before they've actually made money, right? We discount the value of the future extremely, such that if you commit to give away 5-10% of something that hasn't yet materialized, something in the future, you're committing to give away today, 5 or 10% of nothing, which is zero.
David, please tell me how Founders Pledge works, because obviously I know, but some of our listeners wouldn't.
Yeah. So the basic idea is that we ask founders of technology companies to commit legally to give a percentage of their exit, if they ever have one, to go to charity. And they sign a document, a contract, that binds them to do that. Now, it's not like a 20-page legal contract. It's a one-page, if X, then Y. X is I sell shares in my company and make money. Y is then I'll donate some percentage of what I make. The charities or social causes of my choice at that point. And the first person I spoke to, I got a meeting with under different pretenses. A guy named Nick Hungerford, a company started called Nutmeg, who actually recently just passed away, which is quite sad. He's the first person I talked to about it. And I pivoted in the middle of our meeting about, we were talking about something else. I don't even remember what it was anymore. But I said, hey, I've got this idea I want to run by you. And I pitched him this idea, a Founders Pledge. I didn't even have I didn't have anything to walk him through. It was just the idea. He's like, yeah, he asked a bunch of questions. And he said, if you gave me a piece of paper that said something along those lines, I'd probably sign it. I said, oh, wow. I said, really? And he said, yeah, why not? It'd be committing to give away something I haven't made yet. And only if I make it do I give it away. I was like, yeah, that's right. And I asked, okay, I'm gonna put this together and I'm gonna send it to you. But in the meantime, who are 3 other people you think I should talk to who might react similarly? And he gave me 3 names and he said, reach out to them and say, I told you to reach out. He did not offer to introduce me. And he said, you might consider reaching out to these 3 people. And I did. And I got 2 meetings and 2 said yes.
And that they had that proof of concept.
It became a thing pretty quickly. And the Founders Forum were very good to me. And they gave me access. As soon as I got the proof that people were interested in this, they basically said, okay, well, you can grow this within Founders Forum. Come and talk at our next event in June and launch Founders Pledge there.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but I did.
Very generous of them.
Very generous. It wouldn't exist without them, for sure.
Brilliant. Yeah. Are you still involved with them?
I mean, a bit. So we spun Founders Pledge out of Founders Forum in the very, very early days. We've been independent since 2015. But I think we're still part of the family, maybe the extended family now. But I go to most of their events still, and they have been and continue to be very generous with their wonderful network, and they don't have to be.
When you first told me about Founders Pledge, I was not only impressed by the novelty of the idea of pledging something that you don't have yet, which is brilliant. But I was also really impressed by how you make the decisions later, what causes to give to. Can you please walk us through that?
Yeah. So Founders Pledge at the start was just, let's get people to commit to give and see if we can get enough people to do so that we could actually build some momentum in the space and become create a zeitgeist. And it soon became clear that it wasn't just enough to get people to commit to give, they needed to give better. And at the same time, there was this real desire I found for community, and not just community, which is we're fintech entrepreneurs or, B2B SaaS or whatever it is. There was this nascent desire to have community with people who were on the same journey. And I don't want to say spiritual journey because it's not spiritual, but it's purposeful, sitting at the sort of the heart of who a person is and their desire to have success often is this idea that, we can affect the world positively with the success. So Founders Pledge started as this pledge and then became a lot more. And so once someone pledges, they become a part of a community. We do lots of events and convenings for a year. So this year we'll do about 30 events all over the world just for our members, or we bring them together to explore issues of relevance to the group. So they're typically small groups, 10 to 15 people around one of our members' kitchen table with a leader, a thought leader or expert, guiding a discussion about something relevant. Yeah. And then we do, we used to do big forums. But the idea of community brings people together around thematic areas, and they arrive as strangers and leave as friends.
How many people in each event usually?
So the dinners, 10 to 15, sometimes 20.
Yeah, so they really have a chance to get to know.
Absolutely. It was important that they be small enough that you can talk to everyone there. Everyone can speak and have their voice heard and share their perspective. And so we do a lot of these now. The community of members is almost 1,850 now from 40 countries.
Amazing.
And so we have this community educational program that, runs, forever. Someone can join as they raise a Series A or just having, signed an LOI that they're going to sell their company and still participate in our community and learn something from it. And then the final bit is actually helping our members to give better. And I think that's sort of what you were alluding to. It's not just enough to commit to give and then give, but we should give as effectively as possible. There's a problem that I faced, which is like, how do I do this? I'm not Bill Gates. I don't have Bill Gates' money. And even when you do, it's not necessarily very straightforward to give away billions of dollars well. So, I decided to build some infrastructure to enable this impact to happen at real scale. The first piece was actually how to give better.
Yeah.
So built a think tank within Founders Pledge, hired tremendously smart people, often philosophers, statisticians, and data scientists to sort of build out this framework of like, how do we do the most good? And that's grown a lot over the years, and we've really found our voice and our path amongst the lots of paths that exist out there.
Yeah.
And then built the infrastructure, the financial infrastructure, to enable people to give globally, regardless of where they're a tax resident. So it actually turns out to be slightly more complicated than you might expect. If you're an American, to give money to Africa or to Asia or to South America or wherever you're from, like typically a government wants to see money stay within its tax jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But often the biggest problems aren't where the most money is made.
Yeah.
It's often, the case where if you make money in America and you want to really have outsized impact, you should probably be focusing on the low and middle income countries.
How do you solve that problem?
Well, we bring data into the equation, and we help people to make better decisions using it. So we've built a framework that focuses on effective giving, that tries to sort of take a very humanistic but utilitarian approach to making decisions, which is all equal, do as much good as possible, follow data, invest our money, invest in air quotes, donate our money in the same way we invest our money for, return of capital in markets or in funds, see which funds perform the best, invest in those, make money, invest more money, and it grows over time. And in my view, our view was, let's deploy money to the things that we know will do as much good as possible. And we know this because there's data to support it, evidence to support it. Randomized control trials have been run on specific types of interventions that say in a pretty causal way that if we do X, Y will happen. And we believe that Y to be greater than the next Y, Y1 or Y2 or Y3, the other types of interventions that could exist in the world. And so we really tried to be rigorous about understanding how do we affect the poorest of the poor and increase the quality of their life, whether that be in reducing infant mortality or self-reported well-being or reducing the disability burden that they face as people who live in low-income contexts, or improving the quality of their life. And thankfully, there is a large body of evidence, development economics and development aid and the World Health Organization that have been thinking about this space for a really long time and developed excellent hybrid metrics that enable us to compare apples to apples, as opposed to apples to oranges to pears to peaches, right? Which all are sort of similarly shaped, but are different fruit. And it's hard to make decisions on with different metrics.
So do I understand you correctly that you are very focused on how to use the money efficiently, and you determine that by looking at data?
Yes.
As opposed to emotions or what I feel like doing.
We really discourage people from taking an emotional first approach. Often it's easy to do that. It feels good, at least at the start, to take this very my heart says this, or I've met this amazing charity or this amazing charity CEO and I've seen their work, which is like a thing that we hear a lot. It's like, you really haven't seen their work.
Which is how most charities operate, and you mentioned it yourself.
Or they optimize for it, right? They optimize for the emotional appeal.
Yeah.
because that works.
Yeah.
But if all decisions were made that way, then we'd be way worse off. We'd have way less quality of life than we actually do, because most decisions are not made using sort of emotional markers. They're made using sort of very rational, considered, quantitative decisions.
So you mentioned that countries naturally don't want money to go out of their borders. Is there anything you do to, from the legal standpoint, to make it easier for your founders to, invest, as you said, into Founders Pledge?
So we operate something called the Donor Advised Fund. It's not a new structure or vehicle. There's lots of donor advised funds out there in the world. It's actually the most common giving vehicle in the United States, and I think it's becoming increasingly popular here. As like a percentage of all giving happens through donor advised funds, and it basically is like a charity checking account. It allows a donor to irrevocably donate money or assets to a nonprofit, a charity. They get a tax receipt the moment they donate it, and then that nonprofit holds their money, either investing it in public funds or holding it in cash until they're ready to actually give it away. And then the donor advised fund makes the grants on behalf of the donor. Pretty simple concept. And our take was donor advised funds really only ever give within the same tax jurisdiction that they receive assets. Again, very limiting. So our donor advised fund only works with a small number of people, only Founders Pledge signatories. So it means we don't have to cater to many thousands of people, tens of thousands of people like all the others do. We're focusing on a very small subset, and we're enabling them to give anywhere in the world. And so the UK has a very expansive charitable regime, and it means that we can make grants from the UK and also from the US, having conducted rigorous due diligence on the organizations, ensuring that they operate and would pass muster if they were based in the UK, but aren't from a donation perspective. So we can make grants globally. So when someone works with Founders Pledge, they can, but certainly don't have to use our donor advised fund. And if they do, they can make grants anywhere on the planet, as opposed to just within the UK. And that's the same for our members across Europe and across North America.
That's very helpful.
Yeah. And interestingly, our donor advised fund is zero cost. So we don't charge our members fees for using it.
I was about to ask you that. So please tell me how it actually works technically. It's very important.
Typically, donor advised funds are pay for service, and they're typically based on the assets under management. So if you donate £1 million, you'll pay a fee based on that £1 million. Depending upon the donor advised fund, it could be more than 100 basis points, which is 1% per year of admin fee. Right? So it's not an insignificant amount of money, and but that creates a weird incentive, right? So if your whole business is built on charging fees based on assets under management, AUM, then you're optimizing to have as much AUM as possible, because that's how you make money. But this means that the donor advised funds have no incentive to get money out the door to charities that actually need them. Far from it. There's a proliferation of what we call zombie DAFs, where it's just like they hoard money and sit on hundreds of millions or billions of dollars of assets that are invested, making fees on that money, and never push their donors to actually deploy the capital to nonprofits.
Wow.
And so this is problematic, obviously. And rather than creating the same broken system, I decided I'd eat the cost of running the donor advised fund, so that our incentive actually was to get money out the door. So we don't charge.
How do you eat it exactly?
I raise money from donors to fund Founders Pledge. And with that, pay for the entirety of the operations of the nonprofit without charging our members anything ever.
So these founders have a choice whether to support your organization
They do.
or to send all their money into causes.
And we don't say, hey, the moment they pledge, leave a percentage of your pledge for us, or the moment that they put money in the donor advised fund, hey, you've got money now, do you want to support Founders Pledge? Our whole thesis is built on we should be earning our keep and delivering value. And if we're delivering value and it's better than anyone else's value, then our members should want to support us of their own accord. and that's proven to be the case.
Okay.
So we raise money independently of our members and of their pledges every year to keep the lights on. Turns out, in the early days, our members didn't have money because they just pledged and they were just like everyone else. And so we raised money from existing philanthropists with this idea that, we can help people that are going to be very wealthy be better philanthropists than they might have been themselves as early donors, and sort of increase the efficiency of their giving. And as a result of that, they started to fund us. And as time has gone on, now 9 years in, the majority of our funding comes from our members. Because they choose to support us, not because they have to.
So you accepted this enormous risk that next year you won't have that money, right? Because there is no formula that works automatically. So you have to go out and talk to people constantly.
Every year, yeah. So like I in the early days, it was cheap to run. And so, I would spend a month or two every year bringing in £150,000 to run Founders Pledge. And now we spend about $8 million a year to run. So it means I spend a lot more of my time doing it. But we've, after 9 years, we've become very effective. The differential between how much we spend and how much we help our members donate is significant. So
we'll get to the numbers in a minute, but I really want to understand on the personal level.
Yeah.
How do you keep that desire to do it going for so many years? Because how many years it's been now?
9.
So basically for 9 years now, you've been living in this extremely stressful situation, trying to raise money for your next year, for your next endeavor. What kept you motivated to do that?
Yeah. I mean, it is really hard, right? So it's like raising a Series A in perpetuity every year, year on year, for the last 9 years from the same investors. But the thing that keeps me going is like, what we're building is important, and it's never been done before in this way. I'm a real believer that if you align incentives well, structurally from the start, and do good work, then, I believe you'll have success if you just put all of your energy into it. And so the reason I've done it this way is to ensure that our entire purpose is built around impact first. And it's not built around making it easy or, raising money because it's emotionally compelling. The whole idea of Founders Pledge is that like impact should be everything.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out how to keep the lights on. And it's mostly like going out, talking to existing philanthropists and convincing them that like at some point in the future, the differential between what we spend and what we get out into the world will be exponential, and it will be worth the investment, right? It's just like, it's not just like, but it's similar to how, you raise money from VCs as a tech founder, and you spend a lot of money every year for many, many years, losing year on year, until you sort of hit this curve and you 100x the investment.
Yeah.
And now, listen, we're not going to 100x the investment. Well, maybe we will, but it's certainly not there yet. But the idea was that by investing in the infrastructure of this initiative really early on and continuing to invest, we could just focus on keeping the main thing, and not ever have to sell to survive. Focus on, brutal transparency and honesty and helping people be better donors, better philanthropists.
So how much money is currently committed to Founders Pledge?
Yeah, so 10.2 billion or so.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How much of it has already been employed?
A bit more than $1 billion, 1 billion and 2 million or so, I believe.
Can you give me maybe your favorite story of how you created impact with that money?
I sort of assumed when I started Founders Pledge that I'd have a really long time between when, I started signing people up and when exits started to happen. And it actually started, like, I figured I'd have like many years.
Yeah.
And it happened really quickly.
Oh, wow.
So like in year 2, we saw our first exit.
Incredible.
And, my philosophy was we'll build the infrastructure to deliver impact as we need to, right? Like I don't want to have a big team in year 2 working on the research and sort of the think tank before there's money to give away. And it started to materialize. And so we had to sort of spin up operations pretty quickly. And there was some learning to happen, and our really early donors, early members who had liquidity were like pretty patient. Because
they've been through startup also, so they could relate.
That's right. And we started to produce research and started to find organizations that were doing good work. And our thesis was find organizations that had, or cause areas at least at the start, that had real scale. There was a really large total addressable market that had solutions that could potentially work. So there was tractability in the space. And importantly, if those two first conditions were met, the third was there needed to be neglectedness. So we didn't want to give into areas that that were large in scale, that had solutions but didn't need money. So it needed to have all three of these components. And it soon became clear pretty early on that mental health was a very deeply neglected area.
Okay.
Neglected in the sense that mental health captures 1/50 of the funding that goes into HIV/AIDS in low-income countries. And when we think about mental health, we tend to think of it as a global north high-income problem. Only we people of privilege have mental health issues. But it turns out not to be the case. It turns out mental health is health, and it's a pervasive health issue everywhere. But it gets so much less attention in low-income countries, typically sub-Saharan Africa, where it's just not a thing that is focused on. So in the year two-ish, sort of the end of year 2, year 3 of Founders Pledge, we identified a nonprofit working across Africa doing mental health treatment and intergroup personal therapy with women and mothers in sub-Saharan Africa. And it had this incredibly beautiful, eloquent model, which was train women who are well-respected leaders in their villages to facilitate more therapy amongst the people in their village. And you can sort of have this spread of mental health. It's called Strong Minds. And we were one of the very, very, very early donors to support them. And, they gave them catalytic funding that's enabled them to continue to grow and scale. And, it was one of my really early memories of being wow,
that's an amazing
we enabled this organization, I think, in a lot of ways to grow, and they continue to do tremendous work, but in an area that is just so historically underfunded.
I can totally see why. So by now you've seen so many founders who pledged their money and exited. How do you think the fact that they pledged the money before they exited affected their post-exit journey? Because both you and I know that looking for a new purpose is probably the most painful thing that happens after we sell our businesses. We're usually shocked by it, and we feel this need to fill the void.
Totally. I think in a pretty real way. So I think most founders start businesses to solve problems. We're natural problem solvers. And that desire to solve problems never really goes away. Most founders, we spoke about this at lunch some weeks ago. Most founders have this exit and then feel empty inside because they're okay, now what do I put my energy to? There's still so many problems out there. And so they try to make themselves feel less empty with stuff often and experiences. But it really is just putting a bit of a plaster on the wound. It doesn't really solve the underlying problem. And I think committing early to philanthropy is actually a really powerful motivator. It says, my journey is in service of something. It's directional. And when I have this outcome, if I have this outcome, then I know that I've already committed to doing this. And it gives sort of an anchor point of this is what happens next. And it's our job as a nonprofit, as Founders Pledge, who are trying to take these people on a journey to help them scale up over the course of time so that they're really well prepared by the time they have this outcome or approaching this outcome to be able to think about it well. So our events aren't just, socials and networking events. And in fact, they're not that. It's about learning and connecting and being more coordinated with peers also on this path. Such that you can come to an event and know nothing about neglected tropical diseases or mental health in low-income countries or high-income countries, or what the climate crisis actually means, or our energy needs for the next 50 years, or how to affect air pollution or oral health, and like leave with much more knowledge and a way to dig into that area if you're interested in real depth, such that by the time there is an outcome, there's like a very clear path for more. So I think, you know, to a large degree, many of our members would have given to charity regardless of us. But I think as a result of Founders Pledge, they typically commit to give more, and they certainly give much, much more effectively as a result.
For me, there is a very personal, you can even say selfish benefit from doing that. When we sell our companies, we face this confusion. We're overwhelmed and confused. We lose our structure. We lose our relationships. We don't really know what to do. And I can imagine that if you already have a commitment to Founders Pledge, you suddenly actually have a structure and you have relationships. So you solve some of the biggest problems for these people early on. They have something to hold on to. But also what I love about it, I see a direction being very much out sort of from your selfishness and to selflessness, which always feels fulfilling.
Indeed.
So I think from my perspective, you actually create this amazing vehicle to help people get to more fulfilling lives and to have greater impact in life without wasting this time after exit. Because my personal sort of mission in life, you can say, is that it is to help post-exit founders, who are some of the most competent and consequential people in the world, to not waste this time and to go straight into solving even bigger problems, solving them better, and getting the benefit of fulfillment. And I see that Founders Pledges is a fantastic vehicle exactly for that.
Well, you put it very well. I agree completely. Indeed. I think these people are really sort of some of the most tremendous executors and operators that exist. And if they just stop doing the thing that they're really good at, that they've spent years working on, and do nothing, they go stir crazy, crazy,
depressed,
and get depressed.
Talking about mental health issues,
and we try to sort of just like funnel them into the next thing. And like, I think philanthropy is a stepping stone. I don't think it's the end. I think that, you know, every good entrepreneur, even if they're, you know, getting up there in years, has another business in them. And maybe that next business, as a result of working with us, can be one that's more focused on solving the really tough social problems. And sort of coming back to my time at the Founders Forum for Good, the issue was talent. There wasn't enough talent.
Exactly.
Or the right talent. Imagine if the people who had these really great outcomes, sold their businesses, made their millions or billions of dollars, understood the world better as a result of doing really effective philanthropy, decided to then start another business focused on solving big problems.
Exactly.
Instead of making money, how do we solve distribution issue X in country Y?
Because for most of us, actually, earning money is no longer a motivator.
That's right.
And we're looking for a new one, and you offer that direction, which I think is important. You mentioned something profound before, that you don't feel the journey you offer your founders is a spiritual one, which I was surprised about, because for me spirituality is actually this growing out of selfishness and into serving and giving. And I would like to explore your thinking a little bit, because I definitely feel that you are guiding people in the spiritual journey, and how I see it from the outside.
Well, it may be spiritual, but we don't intend it to feel spiritual. We intend it to feel like rational. So I often say, the heart leads us to give, but the head should govern how it's done. And if we index too much on like the heart and how we feel, then we sort of fall prey to pretty specific problems that like we can avoid by taking a more sort of rational head-based approach. So it doesn't ignore spirituality. It just doesn't make it the focus of the exploration.
No, now I can see where you're coming from. You actually want to differentiate yourself from those charities who sell emotions in a way, or sell big ideas, spiritual ideas. You want to differentiate yourself. Yet again, I feel that without advertising it, you actually are guiding people very effectively in their spiritual journey.
We just don't call it a spiritual journey.
And I understand now why, because you want to differentiate yourself. And I guess there are lots of people who may be also scared by that, because they may think our spiritual means religious, and that then you open up a whole Pandora box. When you start talking, people unfortunately are quite uncomfortable talking about spirituality, and I can see that you don't want to scare them away. But again, I think those who stay with you for a long time, they probably, if they look back, will say, yes, I spiritually evolved significantly thanks to my involvement with this pledge.
Yeah, I bet if you'd ask, several hundred people who've had liquidity and have given their money away and worked with us, that I bet many of them would describe it as they've been on a spiritual journey.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm actually really sure about that. This takes us to your next venture, your newest project, which I find very, very exciting. And I would like you to talk more about it, and also to educate my audience about what it is. So tell me about Pledge Ventures and how it works together with Founders Pledge. What's the relationship there? Yeah.
So I mentioned I do a lot of fundraising to keep the lights on for Founders Pledge. We spend about $8 million a year, every year, to operate. And I'm sort of at the center of it. I have a very good fundraising team that supports me. But at the end of the day, I go out to our donors and make the asks and do the close. And in June of 2021, I had a lunch. I just finished lunch. I was leaving and was walking back to the office, and I was on my phone, and I went to step into the street and nearly got hit by a bus. So I'm from America, so I looked the wrong way. A bus was coming the other direction. I nearly got smashed. It was a close call, and it really freaked me out. And I sort of stepped back and I was like, okay, I didn't die, but I nearly did. And I thought, my family would be sad, but they'd get over it. What would happen to Founders Pledge? And I sort of came to the conclusion that it would be in real trouble. Not because it's not well run, it is. I have a tremendous COO and a tremendous team. They're wonderful. And it works well mostly because I don't do most of the ops, but I do most of the fundraising. And if I disappear, we struggle to pay our team. And so I realized that I can't be a single point of failure anymore. And so something has to change. And I spent a couple of months trying to figure out what that was and what that would look like. And to cut a long story short, I sort of came to this moment where it's like, we ask our members to fund us after they've derived value from us. But our members make their money primarily from exits in their business. What would it look like if we went a level higher and made money alongside our members? What would have to be true in order to benefit at the same time as our members did? And the answer was pretty clear. We'd have to be on the cap table. And it was just a hop, skip, and a leap until I sort of realized we needed to start a venture fund, which we did. So Pledge Ventures is a commercial venture fund that was incubated by Founders Pledge, and now it's entirely independent. It was spun out of it, although we share some resource. And the goal of Pledge Ventures is to invest in Founders Pledge member companies with a set of rules. The LPs invest for commercial returns. They're there to make money, but the GP is effectively a nonprofit. In that it donates back 85% of its carried interest, everything that it makes, to Founders Pledge to run the operations. So you have this nice idea whereby Pledge Ventures invests in member companies, and the rules are pretty straightforward. There's 3 of them. One of the founders has to be a member of Founders Pledge. The company is raising a Series B or later of $20 million or more, and there's a top-tier fund participating in the round. So we looked at the data. We found sort of what top quartile performance looks like, and it was B+ alongside top-tier investors. And my belief was that we, as Founders Pledge adjacent, could invest in our members because we knew them at this very crucial, consequential scale moment alongside the best investors in the world, and get allocation to rounds that are otherwise totally inaccessible to everyone else, way oversubscribed. But because the GP donates back so much of its carry to charity, we should be able to get a small slice of big rounds very reliably. And that was the thesis. And so I went out and, spoke to about 25 or so Founders Pledge members saying, hey, I've got some cash on my balance sheet. You're raising a funding round. Can I participate? And people were like, wait, you guys have money? I'm like, are you sure you have enough to do that? And I was like, yeah, no, it's good. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And these are people who are actively fundraising at the moment. And every single person said yes. They said, yeah, of course. We'd love to have you participate in our round. And I was like, cool. Well, I don't actually have money to invest. So just kidding. But I wanted to confirm that if we did, you give me allocation. These are all oversubscribed rounds. And so I was like, I did 25. It's like, I should probably talk to another 25. I cherry picked. I was like, these are the people that I know. Then I went out to a wider array of people and spoke to another 25, so about 50. And 22, 23 people were insta yeses. Yes, we'd love
That's quite incredible. I mean, they really must feel you're giving that value. And
yeah, I mean, and the idea was we're not writing big checks. We don't do follow-on. It's a one-time investment at a very consequential moment. And it's about giving back. So the idea was you could take money from venture capitalists, more money, or the same amount of money that you would have taken. Or you can take this money from venture capitalists minus $1.5 million or $2 million and take the rest from us, and we'll participate in your success alongside you. And when you have money, the fund will be successful. And when the fund is successful, Founders Pledge makes money from it. So it's a nice idea. So I did this testing at the end of 2021 and then realized there was really something here. I told people, obviously, in the same conversation that I pretended that I wanted to invest, that we're not actually going to, but I want to start a venture fund. And over the course of these conversations, we got a fair bit of commitments as LPs. I wasn't intending to fundraise, but we got really early traction with people on a single phone call.
So you basically, in that concept, you made two major assumptions. One was that the target companies will welcome you, but the other one was that this world's best investors will also welcome you into their rounds. How did that work? Did you prove that part of the concept?
End of 21, times were still pretty good. Start of 22, it began to change, and so we spent a year trying to figure out actually how to do this model. It hadn't ever been done before, where you have a commercial LP-GP venture fund with a 2-in-20 structure, but the GP donates to charity. It needs to be tax efficient. How can there be effective control by a nonprofit without there being too much control and too much linkage that it creates conflicts of interest? So we spent 9 months with lawyers trying to figure it out, and eventually did. And in that 9 months, the world really changed. And we went from the biggest, bull run to the dark times of winter, where we're still there. But we raised $43 million. We're still fundraising. We'll do our final close at the start of 2024, but we started to invest. So to answer your question, how do other investors view us? Pretty favorably, actually, I think. And but I was prepared to fight for every allocation in every round. My LPs were like, "You're gonna have to fight." I was like, "Yeah, no, I know. That's what I've been doing.
Yes, exactly.
for the last decade. I can keep on keeping on." And but it turned out not to be that much of a fight. So we're investing really alongside top tier investors, but in hot companies that are raising oversubscribed funding rounds. They're oversubscribed because the companies are great. And when the companies are really great and they're really oversubscribed, the founders have a lot of control. And these are founders who've been on a journey with me and with Founders Pledge, and they have derived value from us over the years, and we've never asked for anything back. And so, we've accrued 9 years of goodwill. Yeah. And we're asking for $1 million, $1.5 million, 500,000 of a round of 30 or 40 million. And when they say to their lead investor, "This is important to me," the lead investor always lets us in. We've not had an issue yet. We've done 6 investments so far. And it seems to be working.
Yeah, it is. You have to wait for a while to really see if you get enough money that way. So I assume for now you're still very busy fundraising to keep the lights up.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, it's hard, but we have people who really believe in us. We support, many families and family offices now with their philanthropy. So we've sort of expanded just from working with pre-exit founders to we support philanthropists with our research and our resource.
So walk me through this. I assume they don't pledge equity because that's not how they're structured. So they just directly give you money to support the organization.
Yeah. So we work with families and family offices and ultra net worth individuals for whom a traditional pledge like we'd have, like Hungerford signed, that doesn't really make sense. But we have a couple of programs that enable us to work with existing wealth in a nice way. So we have a program called the Foundry, and so this is like a multi-year program to fund Founders Pledge, because people believe that we're important to exist in the world, the global public good. We produce research, we help people give better. The research that we produce is all public. There's no paywalls, like it's all on the open internet. So you don't actually have to be a member to take advantage of it. So people fund us because we're just very effective as far as leverage goes. So when someone makes a multi-year commitment to fund Founders Pledge, they become a member by that commitment.
Yeah.
And then if they are giving away more money throughout the year, then they can work with us, our advisors and our research team, to optimize their giving for impact. And so we have, I think, 12 or 13 families now that are a part of the Foundry, this giving program, that we help with their philanthropy. And then we have another program for people who are giving away much larger sums on a yearly basis. We built bespoke research programs for them. Typically people giving in the order of 5 million plus per year. We can really help them to build foundational knowledge if they're just getting set up, or if they're doing a pivot out of work that they found is less effective, or the strategy has changed. We help people really go from first principles and build real sector expertise on the back of research and active grant making. And so we work with several families.
And the way it's structured, you don't feel there is you feel that the incentives are aligned.
Incredibly.
There is no conflict of interest in that at all, because again, you're not charging any fee.
So for the Foundry program, people make a commitment to donate to us, and as a result of that commitment, then they get access to everything that we have to offer. So I don't consider it fee for service. And as a result of that, there are lots of philanthropy advisors out there who charge fees or an engagement cost up front. And then they're a provider of a service, and the people who gave them the money are the client. And the client is always right, right? So, you go to a restaurant, you don't like the food, you send it back because you're the customer, the client, you're always right. But with philanthropy, it's often the client is mostly wrong, or often wrong, and or needs to update in some way, or is liable to make mistakes absent a challenge or provocation. And so we take the view that, when people become Foundry donors, they're partners. They're not clients. They're not a provider of a service. They're a member. And so we work with them like members. And when they are potentially making decisions that, the data doesn't support, or that seem wrong, bad, we challenge them on it. Now, they can still make those decisions because they're people with agency and they don't have to follow our advice. But if presented with data that says, this isn't good, and this is 12 times better, so says the data, people tend to make the more rational decisions and follow the recommendation that actually makes the most sense. So we consciously complicate conversations so that people can be better donors, expand their moral circle, and as a result be more effective.
So why would someone give money to Founders Pledge?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple of reasons, but maybe the most compelling one is we create leverage. So you could give $1 to a charity does $1 worth of good, 1 for 1. I guess that's fine. But if you give $1 to us, we will, at the very minimum in year, create 23 more dollars of charitable giving that go out into the world.
Okay.
So we're a machine for leverage. The difference between what we cost to run and the amount of money that we help our members to donate every year is so significant that funding us means 23x more goes to charity as a result. Now,
incredible.
If you care about specific things, like global health and well-being, or mental health, or climate philanthropy, or improving the quality of science, a large portion of the money that we help our members give every year goes into these areas. And so, at the very least, you're getting some multiple on your money that otherwise wouldn't happen if you're just giving directly to a nonprofit. So that's probably, for me, the most compelling reason to support.
Yeah.
The other is, we're really helping to improve the efficiency of giving and the impact that happens as a result of it. The research that we publish is truly and actually public. So everything we do is on our website. It's pure, full reasoning transparency. And so anyone can go there and utilize the resource at any time. And it allows us to sort of remain laser focused on this without having to sort of monetize our membership or create, weird incentives that don't help anything aside from.
So your incentives are aligned with your members, and that's hugely important, because that's, I think, is a fundamental problem with charities.
That's right.
I after my exit, I gave to charities a lot just to realize that I'm not happy about it, and I felt horrible about myself because I thought I'm such a selfish person. I'm not getting much out of, it doesn't make me happy. I don't get fulfillment from helping others, and I think it is just because the incentives are not aligned and it doesn't work. That
you had a cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's broken. The industry is broken, and I love it that you are thinking about it very differently. You're thinking about how do we align our incentives, how do we do good together.
That's right.
Right, and then the community bit is very important, because I think people will reinforce each other's commitment. Because I asked you before, what sustains your drive towards your true purpose? And oftentimes I find that if other people around you are not on a similar journey, that it becomes very lonely, and then you can just lose focus and you're less driven, you have less energy going that way.
Yeah.
But the community helps people stay focused.
Yeah. And it's really nice to get the odd message from someone who we've been working with for many years, who's had that liquidity event, finally, the overnight success after 10 years, right? And it's a life-changing event, and they often, feel hollow and alone and empty, even with family and kids. And then we help them figure out how to give and take them on this journey. And, I get the occasional note that says, thank you for helping me find myself again. And it's just like, it really sort of hits right in the middle of the chest. I get that emotional feeling.
But it's so important, because without that, you'll probably give up, because it's too hard. You have to have that feeling to keep going.
Yeah. And, I think the other part of it is we've not even scratched the surface of the potential that we have yet. 9 years in, it's been a long journey. It's been hard. We really have ground our way to $10 billion of pledge value. We've ground our way to $1 billion of actual donations, but it's a drop in the bucket. The bucket's floating in the ocean, and all of the water is money. And we have the ability to really impact the world at real scale.
Yeah,
we're just starting to hit that real exponential growth curve in a way that I've been promising to my donors we'd hit. But 2022 and 2023 are looking to be the years that it actually really takes off.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah,
I can't wait to see the results. But to me, also a very attractive thing about your model has always been this efficiency. Just knowing that every dollar I give will be used for the right thing, that it will be used as efficiently as possible, because the people who make the decision have this experience and have this mindset, which is very much aligned with my mindset. It's like, how do we use every dollar most efficiently for a business? But it's the same mindset, just a different purpose.
We don't actually make the decisions on behalf of our members. We help them make better decisions using data. So often people think that when they pledge that they give away control of their money, and it's definitely not the case. So when someone pledges and they donate, they have total control over where they give to. They can
That's hugely
they can give to anything they want, regardless of its effectiveness. If we consciously complicate a conversation and make a challenge, saying, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't give to this butterfly sanctuary in Madagascar," maybe it's not the most effective use of your money. People can say, "Yeah, that's okay, but I want to." Your money, you should do what you want with it. You can do what you want. We'll make the grant on your behalf. So it's important to just note that people have control. We just empower them with data and try to help them make better decisions. We don't always succeed, but that's also okay.
So to summarize, what differentiates you from other charitable enterprises out there? So leverage, you described it beautifully. The fact that your members keep control of their money, which is great. you help set up a legal structure which takes that work out of, it's not their problem anymore because you have a very efficient tax structure.
That's right.
To help them. What else am I missing? Community, of course.
Huge community. We do events and convenings. And really try to coordinate people so that they aren't doing this alone. And often it feels very, or it can be very harrowing to, have the responsibility of stewarding wealth.
And of course, there's no fee.
There's no fee.
So people are basically free to use the money the way they want. They keep the control. There's no fee. There's really no downside for somebody to no wonder people make the commitment in minutes at a meeting.
Yeah. Or like a multifamily office set up exclusively for entrepreneurs that focuses exclusively on philanthropy and charges nothing for its service.
Sounds too good to be true.
It does, but it's not.
When something is too good to be true, it's worth investigating.
I think so, yeah.
Dave, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This was wonderful.
Thank
you.